Episode 110 this week, Pen Pals. Pen Pals, a so-so episode, but it is the first episode in a while to do the classic, the next generation formula, A story, B story, and they interconnect. So in this one, the Enterprise is headed to a system that's flying itself apart, planets are breaking up, destroying themselves. Every system in this interplanetary solar system gonna fly apart. The Enterprise is there to study the phenomenon. They never saw anything like it, apparently. So Will Riker decides he wants to put Wesley Crusher, an acting ensign, in charge of the mission to examine this phenomenon and determine what's going on with it. So the senior staff discuss it. Dr. Pulaski, not a fan of this. She said he's just a little boy. We shouldn't let a little boy do anything like that. He's just a little child. And everybody else was of the opinion, well, he's an acting ensign and he's trying to get into Starfleet. You might as well give him some responsibility. And so Picard says, well, I guess we outvoted Pulaski, put him in charge, number one. And so they bring in Crusher, put him in charge of the mission. He's flabbergasted. He's like, but I'm just an acting ensign. I don't want to be in charge of full-blown Starfleet officers that are twice my age, which was a valid point. But they put him in charge of the thing. And then on the bridge, Data's running some experiments where he's trying to find sound waves from these planets, seeing if they're communicating or anything like that. He's got equipment all over the place. Worf trips over it, and Worf gets mad at Data, his superior officer, for not keeping the bridge all nice and tidy. Data was running scientific experiments related to the mission at hand. He has to apologize to a subordinate officer in Mr. Worf. Then he takes the equipment to his quarters and he answers a communication from a little girl. She asks if anyone's out there and Data's like, yes. And so Data goes to Picard, tells him what he did. Picard's like, but the Prime Directive. And Data's like, oops, sorry. And then Data keeps communicating with her. Now, normally the episodes don't have a lot of time lapse, but they said several weeks had gone by, and Data had been communicating with this little girl for weeks. Crusher's running the show, the research and determining what's going on with these planets. And Wesley gets kind of upset because he suggests a certain type of test, and the person on his team says, well, I wouldn't bother with that. It takes too much time and effort. And the other people on the team are like, yeah, listen to him. It takes too much time. So Wesley's like, oh, okay, never mind. He runs out all frazzled. He wanted the experiment run. Then Picard tells Data to cut all ties with the little girl. Data says, okay. And he turns on the audio so he can hear the little girl begging for help. Picard's like, okay, fine, we'll help the little girl, even though it's a blatant violation of the Prime Directive, and we're supposed to let him be blown to bits. And so Data decides he wants to go down to the planet and see what's going on there. Picard's totally against it, but he eventually caves, sends Data to the planet. The little girl discovers Data in her house, and he beams her up to the Enterprise. O'Brien's for words. Data takes her to the bridge. Picard just loses it. He's irate because there's a child on his bridge, and it's an alien that shouldn't be in communication with anyone from the Enterprise to start. And here Data is with this little girl, and she doesn't want to leave, so she ends up having to sit right by Data's side on the bridge at his post. Finally, Picard sends Data off to sickbay with Pulaski so she can wipe the memory of having been on the Enterprise. Then Wesley Crusher decides, okay, we're running that experiment anyway, just do it. And his team's like, oh, okay, sure. They had nothing against it. They would have ran it if he told them to ran it. But Wesley just caved to his team because he thought he's just a little boy, he shouldn't be in charge of a team. And he acted that way rather than saying, well, they're under my command, technically speaking. They'll do what I order, which is what ended up happening. Once they ran the experiment, they figured out what was wrong. They were able to correct the problem. That little girl's planet was saved. Data took her back down to the planet and put her to Betty by. Everything was okay. It was alright. Except for they violated the Prime Directive in a whole slew of ways. Now, that was basically the end of that. Some interesting notes. There was an opening scene in the holodeck where Picard was riding a horse, or wanted to ride a horse at least, till he got called to the briefing room. Diana Troy was with him, and they had like some weird conversation with Picard seeking companionship with a horse instead of a woman. It got kind of weird. There's a weird conversation. Also in this one, the first successful ordering of tea Earl Grey hot for Captain Picard. He ordered it several times from the replicator after this. His only other time to order it before there was a system malfunction and there was a plant in his tea. This time he got it and he was able to drink the tea straight away. Also, the little girl alien was played by Nikki Cox, who was a big deal actor in the 90s on several WB shows. So that was like one of her first major roles when she was 7-8 years old. But pretty much episode 110